A new report in the Washington Post says ICE is spending millions of dollars on SUVs with the words "Defend the Homeland" on them. Documents reviewed by the Post show the agency paid more than $2.4 million for Chevy Tahoes, along with gold detailed wrapping.
For insight into this and the overall picture of immigration enforcement here in the district, we're joined by Nowrasteh. He is the Vice President for Economic and Social Policy Studies at the Cato Institute. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
For having me.
So let's talk immigration arrests first. There have been 914 people arrested since the takeover began. We know more than 250 of those arrested are undocumented migrants. What does this whole thing look like to you as it plays out?
It looks like the excuse for having this crackdown in D.C. was, of course, broader crime, which is a problem in the city. But like in a lot of other places, what we see is really just an excuse for immigration enforcement to put more ICE agents on the streets and to have the Trump administration step in and vacate essentially Washington, D.C. sanctuary city policy, which limits the local police cooperation with federal immigration enforcement. So they're really like going to town on a lot of these immigration enforcement operations, like at most traffic stops in the city. MPD officers are there with ICE officials looking over their shoulder to check to make sure the people they pull over are lawfully present in the United States. And if they're not lawfully present, if they're illegal immigrants, then to detain them and remove them to a detention facility for deportation.
So we've seen delivery drivers detained. If you walk around Columbia Heights, you won't see any of the street vendors that are usually out there. What, in your mind, have been some of the community impacts that we've seen in just, the little more than 2 weeks since the Guard's been deployed?
So I think the big impact, and I don't live in the city, but I work in the city most days. And so what I've seen is there are just many fewer deliveries going on, many fewer delivery drivers. A lot of them have sort of moved out into the suburbs, into Maryland, and to other cities such as like Baltimore. I even heard of a few individuals who have gone up to Philadelphia. I mean, the big impact, and this sounds not like the largest negative effect in the world, but the big impact, I think, has been shifting a lot of these lower income workers from delivery services sort of out of the area, out of the city, into the suburbs, other cities, or perhaps into some other occupations. There is a slightly slowing labor market in the DC area. It's not a depression or anything like that. But as a result, a lot of people have lost their jobs in places like construction. And over the last 6 months, they've been going into delivery services in the city where there's still a very vibrant market of that. Now with immigration enforcement, that's making deliveries look like a less fruitful occupation for a large number of individuals who are illegally present in the United States. So as a result, I think it's really shrinking that market, and most people in DC are going to see the effects, at least immediately, when it comes to the delivery of their lunches and foods. And then you're going to see it reverberate throughout much of the other service sectors of the economy where locals consume, such as at restaurants, at bars, at clubs, or any other kinds of services that people rely on in the city.
How significant do you think that could be long term?
I think it could be very negative for a lot of the smaller and mid-sized businesses in Washington, D.C. I mean, D.C. is a very odd city compared to other cities, right? We have a large, of course, government sector, and then a lot of services that support that government sector and other companies that are here. Services like restaurants, like delivery, like other types of personal services. So I think what we're going to see is a decrease in the number of workers in these areas. We're not going to see much of a change in wages, of course. It's not how labor markets work in this area. But we're going to see a diminishment in the number of services supplied to people in this area. And they're really going to go out to the suburbs, especially into Maryland, which does not cooperate with federal immigration enforcement. And we're not going to see much of a change in Virginia, which does cooperate with federal immigration enforcement. And then once the feds leave, or if they relax their immigration enforcement operations in D.C., we're going to see it snap back very quickly to what it was before.
So, Alex, let's talk about these new cars that ICE is apparently getting. We know that this is an administration that wants to save money, which has some people looking at them a bit sideways of why they're spending about $2.5 million to wrap Chevy Tahoes in gold. What do you make of this decision by the administration?
So I like to view it through the prism of how Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, has operated. For a long time, ICE has been sort of a poor agency, to put it that way. They haven't been super well funded. They haven't been very large compared to other immigration enforcement agencies. They haven't looked like cops, basically, in a lot of other ways. And now they have this enormous windfall with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And like the stereotype of the poor person who wins the lottery and then spends their money on a bunch of flashy jewelry, what we have here is a federal agency that wins the lottery. They get enormous increase in their funding, and they're spending a lot of it on a lot of really flashy junk that isn't going to serve them very well in the long term. And I think, these Chevy Tahoes at over $100,000 a piece, with this gold lettering on the side saying, defend the homeland, with recruitment slogans. Some slogans I've heard, although I haven't seen pictures of them, of having President Trump's name on them. That stuff is something that an agency that has been historically poor but is now flush with cash uses inefficiently, uses ineffectively. But I will say probably the best use of money for ICE is to do stuff like this rather than to purchase or to hire new immigration enforcement officers.
Hey, Alex, thanks so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Alex Nowrasteh from the Cato Institute.